Hello everyone, and the first part of the plants part 1 unit, importance and uses of plants. We'll look at the uses of plants first of all. They're important for food like cereals, wheat and maize, fruit and vegetables of course, medicines like aspirin and morphine, morphine comes from poppies, and of course timber production. If we have a look at the stages in timber production, first of all you have to prepare the land for planting. Then you plant your little baby trees. As those trees grow, some of them become sickly or don't grow as well, so you have to cut them down. That's the managing. Once the mature trees are ready for being made into timber, you harvest them, and then they are sent off to market. All plants have adaptations, which are features which increase the survival of the plants in their habitats. A few notable examples: you have a cactus which has a thick stem for storing water, spines to prevent animals from gaining access to that water stored in the succulent tissues, and extensive roots for absorbing as much rainfall as possible when it does rain. Water lilies have floating leaves on the top of ponds, which allows them to photosynthesize at their maximum. And seaweeds like laminaria have a very strong holdfast, which sticks them to the rocks, a very flexible stipe, which is like the stem, and very flexible flattened fronds, which are very tough and just move with the waves, but flattened to allow for maximum photosynthesis. Plants contribute to biodiversity in general, which is the richness and variety of species in habitats on the planet Earth. Different types of plant. There are over 300,000 different species of plant on Earth, and of all the plants, some make spores, and these include the mosses and the ferns. However, more advanced plants make seeds for reproduction, and these include the conifers like pine trees, and of course the flowering plants, fruit trees, and grasses that we get a lot of food from. Now, if we have a look at food chains and webs, food chain generally is just the flow of energy between organisms in a habitat, and plants are the producers for the food chain. Without them, the entire food chain collapses. Now, the organisms which eat the plants are the primary consumers. And these organisms, of course, are herbivores. The organisms which eat the primary consumers are carnivores, and these, of course, will then be the secondary consumers. And the third organism to eat something in the food chain will be the tertiary consumer, and that will probably be another carnivore. However, these carnivores may actually be omnivores. They might eat a combination of both animal and plant material. But something very important to remember is that all the waste products made by organisms and the organisms themselves once they die are broken down by decomposers, and those nutrients which are released by the decomposers are taken up again by the producers in order for them to grow. So decomposers like fungi and bacteria are very important in nutrient recycling. And finally, the last thing you need to remember, the arrows in the food chain show the direction of energy flow. All the different food chains in a habitat or an ecosystem, when they're combined together, they make up something called a food web. Now, all the organisms in the food web are very important, and if one of them were to die out or be removed from the food web, it would have knock-on effects to other organisms. For example, let's say the deer died out. That means there'd be more of these grass plants to eat by the mice, and the wee predatory cat here might do well and might increase in numbers. However, something like the cheetah or leopard up here, it might decrease in numbers because it would have to eat more of the monkeys, and the deer, of course, wouldn't be available for it to consume. So all organisms in a food web are vitally important, and just taking one out of the food web can have disastrous effects potentially. Of course, if something happened to the plants in an ecosystem which killed them, then the entire food web would cease to exist. If we move on to fertilizers, fertilizers of course are used to increase the growth of plants, and they contain mineral nutrients. NPK fertilizers contain nitrates, phosphates and potassium. Nitrates are there to promote the growth of leaves. Phosphates are to promote the growth of roots. And potassium promotes the growth of fruits and flowers. The reason why we need so much chemical fertilizer these days is because the human population is growing exponentially. Predictions, as seen in the graph here, show by 2050 the population may have reached 10 billion, and we need more food basically to feed that growing population. Now if we have a look at an issue involving fertilizers, excess fertilizer runoff into lakes and rivers, etc., promotes the growth of algae in the water, can form dense mats, and this blocks out the sunlight to the plants which grow below that and to the algae lower down in the water, and so they die. The decay of these plants by microorganisms like bacteria takes all the oxygen out of the water, and so animals like fish and others die off through lack of oxygen, and that's basically the effects of eutrophication. Now, concentrating more on the growth of plants, there are limiting factors for the photosynthesis of plants. A limiting factor, something if it's in short supply, will limit the rate of reaction. And for photosynthesis, those three limiting factors are light intensity, temperature and carbon dioxide concentration. Now if we have a look at a limiting factors graph, on the x-axis carbon dioxide concentration, on the y-axis shows the rate of photosynthesis. Now for part A of the graph, the thing that is limiting the rate of photosynthesis just in part A is the carbon dioxide concentration. For the second part, just part B, between the two dashed lines, it is light intensity. But beyond part B, in zone C, because the rate of reaction of photosynthesis is not increasing any further, it must be something else. But we can't be sure because we are limited by the information that we have in that graph. But it is probably the remaining limiting factor, which is temperature. And of course, for plant growth, we can overcome those limiting factors in greenhouses. The glass of the greenhouse can intensify the temperature inside the greenhouse. We can also add paraffin heaters, for example, to increase the temperature further, and also the burning of the paraffin increases the carbon dioxide concentration. So increasing the rate of photosynthesis, and so the plants grow better. Okay, thank you very much.